but I am recording this so that you have access to it at a later date. That we find that makes it a little bit easier to go back and figure out what I said about that thing. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share with you. Oh wait, one more question before I screen share. Who's familiar with Quill? Who's used it before?
So about 3 of us have been using it.
Okay, great. That sounds good. So we've got some folks who are experts in the room. While I am transferring over to the screen share, do those experts want to say anything that they really love about Quill or a question you have about Quill?
Well, I think that we've just started using it, those of us who have been using it, and we'd really like just kind of some tips on how to use it better and how to get on and how to
I have a love. I love
Okay.
that you can spell the words correctly or it's incorrect.
Sorry, can you say that again?
When they retype the sentences, I like that they have to spell all of the words correctly.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things too. All right, can you all see my screen now?
Yep.
Great. So yeah, so when you're starting Quill, we've got about 4 or 5 different tools now. I keep saying 4 because we just added a new tool this week last week that we're very excited about. I'm going to take you to the tools page to start out with, just so you know where you can go to find Quill resources going forward. So here's the quill.org/tools, and I'm going to share links with you on all of this at the end of this session. But for now, quill.org/tools, you can see an overview of each of our 5 major tools. There's the Quill Lessons, which is a collaborative learning experience where you have the opportunity to work through a lesson with students. In my classroom, I would have used this as a mini lesson and guided practice together. So that's sort of how you can think about it, as it's an opportunity to not only share the information you're working on, but also to do checks for understanding and figure out whether or not students are ready to be moved to the independent practice. Quill Connect focuses on sentence combining. Are you all, do you use the sentence combining philosophy in your writing work?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
So so Quill Connect really focuses on building on that research and making sure that students have the opportunity to think about how they can effectively join their sentences, right? You're looking at this example here. It's going to be not only providing them that feedback on on punctuation and spelling and capitalization, but also trying to get them to strengthen the way they combine sentences, not just using the word and or doing run-on sentences, etc. That's Quill Connect. Quill Diagnostic is where we're going to start, so I'll come back to that in a minute. Quill Proofreader is a tool that allows your students to actually go through and check and provide corrections. Now, the things that I love about Quill Proofreader are that not only are students making corrections, but one, they have to find those corrections. For easier content, when you're working with sort of a lower level skill, occasionally it will show you the students where to look for the errors. But for the most part, we really want them to practice reading carefully, right? So if you're getting your kids to do any 2 things on Quill, it's read carefully and write with precision, right? Those are the things that we're looking for our users to do. I found this was really effective when I was using it with a teacher last year, when she used it at the beginning of the lesson where the students were going to proofread their own or other students' papers. What the students found was that by doing this proofreading work first, they were able to sort of wake their eyes up and practice the things that they needed to see, and then get into their friends or their own writing and see those mistakes in a different light. The last tool we have here is Quill Grammar. Quill Grammar is a really great place to start for those students with IEPs, any student who's more than 2 years below grade level, or any student who's maybe sort of an L who still has a little bit of, they're still struggling a little bit with sentence combining. These are sort of the foundational skills that allow students to sort of understand how a sentence works, and then be able to move on to the next stage of combining sentences and showing the relationship between ideas. Just off the bat, are there any of these that you really want to prioritize and make sure we see while we're talking today? Because I won't be able to go through deep tutorials of all of them.
What do you guys want?
Grammar. I want
grammar. Yeah, Quill Grammar.
Quill Grammar, you want to start there? Sounds good. All right, so before we go to Quill Grammar, I'm actually going to have you do the diagnostic because this is a great starting point. So you can see right now that I am logged in, or I'm not logged in. What you can do is log on with your accounts. Are you guys a Google Classroom school?
Yes. Yes.
Great. So if you haven't already created your accounts, I'm just going to go through that process with you right now. So I'm going to go quill.org. And I'm going to, oh, sorry, it logged me into my backdoor account. So I'm going to go ahead and click on sign up here in the corner. And from sign up, I'm an educator. And I want to make sure if you're using your Google Classroom logins, both you and your students should never be filling in this information below. You should only be using the sign up with Google button. Okay. From there, you can go ahead and choose your account. And you want to make sure that your account is associated with Wynn School, right? So I can do that if I've already got an account, or if I'm creating my account, it'll prompt me to do this right when I log in the first time. I'm going to click on my account. I'm going to look where it says the school. I'm going to edit the school. Then I would enter in the school zip code and select my school from the drop-down menu. Okay. If you are not attached to the school, you will not have access to the premium features, so make sure that you link up with the school. Anyone needing more time to work that through, or are you ready for me to keep talking?
I think we're all set.
Good.
Great. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is have folks set up their classes, or do you want to walk through that process real quick?
I think some of us have classes set up. Does everybody have classes set up?
Creative Classroom is crossed out and has.
Sorry, what was the question or the statement?
Well, some of us have it set up and some of us don't. We're just trying to figure out.
Then you're good.
Okay, I think we're all good. I think we have our classes in.
All right, great. So you've got your classes all set. You imported from Google. You check to make sure you have all the right students by clicking on Manage Classes and checking the numbers as you look through. You should be in really good shape. The Google Classroom integration, it's one of those things that Google does right. In the future, we're hoping to have it so that our data pushes back into Google. For now, it's just the students that we're able to integrate. So just make sure that those are the things that you're familiar with. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to Assign Activities, because we want to start with the diagnostic. So I'm under Assign, and I'm going to go straight down here to the Entry Diagnostic. Now you have two options here. The Sentence Structure Diagnostic is what moves students towards sentence combining, right? So it's going to start out with compound sentences, complex sentences. It's going to talk about appositives. There's a lot of different options in here. The L diagnostic is our diagnostic that actually supports with assigning foundational grammar skills, right? We've called it the L diagnostic because that's what it was initially designed for. What we have found, and the way I used it with teachers last year, was in any case where students were looking for, needed a little bit of a step back into the grammar activities. So if I click here on the L diagnostic, a lot of folks wonder, is it going to look different for my students? Here's what they're going to see when they get started. It'll ask them to choose their English, or choose their language. For most students, that's really the only difference that they will see between this activity and the Sentence Structure Diagnostic. So say you have a few high-level students who you know are not going to have a lot of work to do on grammar, you can assign them the Sentence Structure Diagnostic and assign the other students the L Diagnostic, and no one will be the wiser. So the only difference will be getting to select their language. The only thing that changes with the language are the directions, okay? From here, their goal is to turn each one of these sentences into a complete sentence, okay? So if I'm looking at this here, I'm trying to do it with as few possible new words, right? And I'm not trying to change the details, right? So this is something students do. They see the sentence and they will immediately be like, the bad movie, right? Or he watched, they'll change the sentence structure, whatever else. All we want is for them to do the simplest possible thing to change the sentence. Remind students that they want to use as few words as possible to add on that are necessary to make it a complete sentence. Not all sentences will need to be changed, right? And that as they work, they might come across something that's difficult. Just give it their best shot, and Quill will let them submit all of their answers, and we'll use that data. That's the process for students. I'm going to go ahead and log into a demo account real quick so that you can get a picture of what the diagnostic data looks like on the other end. So now I'm under Student Reports. I'm under diagnostics. You won't currently have any data here, but this is where you'll find it. Student reports diagnostics. And this first page here is going to tell me overall how my students did. This is my sentence structure diagnostic. If I had other classes or other diagnostics, I would have had the option to choose those. If I look here, I'll see, so Charles Dickens really struggled with this assignment, right? He was below, so he was not yet proficient. So that's a student that I'm going to want to pay close attention to what his recommendations are. Maya, William, and James were about where I expected them to be, right? They have some stuff to work on, but in general, they have some skills they're building on. And then Harper here seems to be going above and beyond. Now, if I saw a student like Harper after doing the grammar diagnostic, I would maybe let her spend a couple weeks on those, or a week or two on those recommendations, and then I would immediately push her into the sentence structure because she would be ready for that level. Please stop me with questions at any point. The next thing to look at here are the sentence structure recommendations, or for you guys, the L recommendations. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you this chart that shows you exactly what we recommend based on the work student did. So you'll see for sentence structure, these are the different activity packs that you will see. For the grammar, or for the L diagnostic, the recommendations are going to look different, right? That's great. It just means that we're focusing on slightly more foundational skills with the students. Here's how you can manipulate this. Anything in blue is recommended by Quill based on the results that we saw from students. Now you get to make your own choices about whether or not you would like to assign those things or not. So say I know Charles, and if he sees more than 5 assignments when he logs into Quill, he's going to lose his mind. I'm going to not assign these 2 things to him right off the bat. Or say, I've been reading William's work since the beginning of the year, and I have not watched him use adjectives correctly once. Even if he was able to do it on Quill's diagnostic, I still want to assign it to him, right? Once I've assigned it, anything that I've already assigned to students will show up as this green check mark, and anything that I have not yet assigned, well, I can either check it or uncheck it. The last thing we can find here in recommendations, so these are all independent activities. Each of these packs will lead students to independent activities. Here are the collaborative lesson recommendations. Now this is one of the new features that I didn't even know was coming out, and I was so psyched about it when I saw it, so I hope you guys are as psyched as I am. You'll see here that we know which recommendations for lessons are things that are needed across your classroom. So the complex sentences was something 100% of students showed they needed support with. The compound sentence structure, this was something that we knew that about 60% of students, positives, etc., right? And these are each aligned with these topics up here, right? So just by scrolling through here, I know that compound subjects, objects, and predicates, this should be a small group lesson that I do at some point while the rest of my students are working independently. For the parallel structure, once again, we're looking at small groups. For the compound sentence lessons pack, I'll probably consider this a whole class, but allow a few students to move off and work independently. And complex sentences, this is something that I'm considering doing my whole class. Okay? So these are the diagnostic recommendations that you are going to see across the board. Now, after you've assigned the recommendations, or say you wanted the students to do sentence structure, but then you want them to go back and really work on grammar activities, here's where assign activities comes in. So this you can do with me on your page. You're going to go ahead and click on assign activities. And then you're going to click on explore all activities. From here, you're going to notice here are all the ways that you can sort and create your own activity packs. Let me give you just a little bit of lingo breakdown here. Quill, we have activity packs. Those include one or more activities. They're either created by us and are a featured activity pack, or created by you and are just an activity pack. An activity is a Quill Connect, proofreader, grammar, diagnostic, or lesson assignment. Each activity, so this is excluding lessons and the diagnostic, each activity has about 10 to 12 corrections that need to be made, sentences that need to be written, etc. And so you're looking at, and we call those, that's an activity, right? So if I'm looking at Quill Connect, it's anywhere between 8 and 12 sentences. Quill Proofreader, we're looking at between 8 and 12 corrections. Quill grammar, we're looking at between 10 to 12 sentences overall, okay? Diagnostic is 22 questions, and Quill lessons is collaborative. So let's go ahead and look just at Quill grammar for a minute. And we're thinking about 7th or 8th grade students. So I want to show you what happens when I select 7th grade first. Notice that there is only one grammar activity for 7th grade. Here's the reason for this. When we look at the Common Core state standards, they are scaffolded by the different grades. So a 2nd grade Common Core skill will come back up in 7th grade. However, it will still be listed as a 2nd grade Common Core skill, right? We know that kids still struggle with men and women, the plurals there, right? In the same way in 7th grade sometimes that they did when they were in 2nd grade. So each one of these skills, even though it says the grade here, that's not actually usually very relevant to whether or not it's something that your students should have mastered at this point, okay? What you'll notice is on the student interface, they will very rarely, if not never, see that grade level, which is great because we want to make it very clear that anyone could be working on these skills at any point, right? We just had a long conversation the other day about how goose and geese and mice not being meese. So it's, you know, those skills, even though they're supposed to be learned in 2nd grade, they can still be pretty complicated. So let's go ahead and pick a grammar activity by category. This is usually how I search for skills. I find it to be more useful. Here are the grammar activities, and I'm going to look for skills. Now that I can see this drop-down menu, does anyone want to shout out something they want to see?
Pronouns.
Pronouns. All right, let's try some pronouns, okay? All right, so let's try the selves, right? Themselves, ourselves, itself, herself. And here's how it works. Now, you will notice that Quill does not go nuts with directions. With explanations, right? You'll see a lot of websites where kids will basically have a mini lesson to read through before they get started. We try to not have too much text. The reason is, 1, we know kids don't read too much of it, right? 2, we know that when we bog students down in, you know, say we spend a whole bunch of time defining different terms for them, the research has shown that when you spend the time bogged down on kids being able to identify and define gerund, they actually can't then use it effectively, right? So we want to make sure we're teaching students how to effectively use these terms and less focused on the term themselves. So you'll see the example here, right? Reflexive, my computer can shut itself off. Non-reflexive, I can shut my computer down. One thing to note here is because students are able to come back and do activities again and again on Quill, as a teacher, when I'm intervening with a student, what I say is never like, check this portion of your sentence. I say, can you read the directions aloud to me, or can you read the hints aloud to me, right? And the reason I do this is because I want to give students a chance to get there on their own. And if they don't get there the first time they go through an assignment, they'll get there on try 14 or 15, right? Whatever it is, it's an opportunity for them to practice again and again. So can the toy car move itself forward? All right, so let's get it wrong the first time, see what happens. Okay. My answer is not correct. It's asking me to try it again. Okay. So let's go ahead and try the other option. Notice here that in all of Quill's activities, except for proofreader because they're going through and editing a pre-written passage, students actually are asked to type out the entire sentence. We find that this is a really great way to sort of increase that muscle memory for students and to get them to remember what they're working on. A lot of places where students either drag and drop or answer multiple choice, you'll find that students are just really not processing the skills or taking them with it. So the process of typing it out can make a difference. So say, for example, I just write the beginning of the students and I try to move on, it's going to stop the student if their question is not long enough. Okay. So now it's having me check back to see if I have any typing errors. Now sometimes this can be spaces, extra spaces at different points in the sentence. Checking to make sure I didn't end up with any extra spaces. I'm going to rewrite the sentence. There we go. Skip forward. So here we go. You'll see there are more examples that I can work through as I go. This is sentence 1 out of 10, and I can keep moving. The one thing I want to warn you about with the Quill grammar content, it's really great content. However, it was developed in the first year of the organization. We are just a team of 8.
Sorry, I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Okay, so I didn't know if you were ready. If we assign a strand on like reflexive pronouns, and let's say my whole class completes it, can I reassign another strand on the same reflexive pronouns and they would have different sentences or different examples come up?
No, so with our examples, right, whatever the assignment is, that's what we have in terms of sentences. The reason for this is every one of our activities takes a significant amount of time to work on, because we actually have to train an algorithm to recognize the different answers a student might give. As we go, we're hoping our algorithm will, we're not hoping, our amazing developers who understand this more than I do are developing it so that the algorithm will be able to recognize more and newer sentences. But currently we're at the point where we have to train it on each individual sentence, right? So what we do, however, suggest is if the students work through it, and I'll just show you this data real quick. I can go from here real quick. When you're looking here, right, you can see the student, and the students will see their icons that look like this. Everyone gets a green for diagnostic because we don't grade the diagnostic. We just show you what they did and did not get right. We're working to make that a different color so it's not confusing, but for now it's green. Anything else here, I can see that anything green is something my student has mastered. Yellow is something where they're meeting, they're close to it, and red is they're not meeting standards. Here's how I show, the students will see these icons in their dashboard next to the things they've completed. Here's the vocabulary I use with students around this. Green is great job. Yellow is try again. Red means ask for help. The reason I use those phrases is because most of the time with yellow, students are somewhere between 60 and 80%. And if they go back in and work through the assignment again, they will frequently get to the point of mastery. Maybe not the first time, but maybe the second time, they'll get to mastery. It gives them a chance to go through, to read through, to try the sentences again. If they're in the red, especially if they're below 50%, right? So here at Oedipus and the Sphinx, Maya might be successful the next time she comes back, but here at 38%, this is an area where she's really struggling and should ask for support, right? This is just to avoid them from becoming so frustrated they no longer see the value of the tool. And I also think it's a really important thing to remind students that like you can own your own learning and tell your teacher when you need help. And if you see the red, so you can see overall here the list, right? So as you said, right, with the reflexive pronouns, we only have the 10 sentences. It will also appear in some other passages, I believe. Let me clear this real quick and check pronouns. I think we have a proofreader on this one. Right, so in these proofreader passages, the reflexive pronouns will also appear, right? So usually the grammar is where we teach the skill. The proofreader passages is where students have an opportunity to do a little additional practice. So in terms of the grammar activities, like I was saying, they're pretty new. So occasionally they will not, they're pretty new. They're very old. So occasionally there will be something that we've done with the code since then that will make the questions unhappy. In this area, we really rely a lot on you as our community to support and giving us feedback if things aren't working. I can update a Quill grammar assignment within 10 minutes. So if for some reason you notice an error in what it's recognizing, you can either have students take a screenshot or you can take a picture with your camera phone and text it or email it to me right away. What I'll do then is I'll hop in and I'll be able to make that change for you so that it will recognize the student's answer. So that's Quill grammar, and those are the sort of skills that you're looking at to start students out with. Right, so if I'm looking through here, I'm seeing things like the A's and the ands, the verb, the subject-verb agreement, the types of nouns, and capitalization. Any other questions about Quill grammar?
I think we're all set.
Great. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to hop right over to Quill Connect. because I think that it's great to see sort of the differences between those different types of skills. So I'm going to switch this around. I'm looking at my standard level now. I'm going to look at some Quill Connect formative assessment. So one of the things that we're doing right now with Quill is we've been skill-based for a while, and we're working towards more content-based work, right? The reason for this is because we find that obviously kids are able to make more sense of things in context, right? So if we're talking about the American Revolution, right, and we have activities where students are reading and then combining the ideas, making relationships between ideas from here, we find that that's a pretty effective way to learn. That can have a lot more relevance than, say, Michael Jordan bounced the ball. Now, the other thing that you will notice is that across the board, we've always tried to focus on informative content if it's not the most, even if it's not the thing that like you're studying in class right now. So for example, if you're reading a passage that's about bats, that's someone on our team did research and all of the facts about bats are true statements of some sort, right? One of the things I like to do with my students is I like to say, all right, when you're working on Quill, I'd like you to do two things. I want you to pay attention to what writing skill you're using and what information you are learning, right? So if I'm reading the bats passage, what did I learn about bats today? If I read about the importance of the buffalo, what did I learn about the buffalo? Those are the different things that we're looking for. So I just clicked on Quill Connect. Once you get to these higher level activities, and this is why we recommend working through the activity packs first, is the activity packs will give the students all of the tools to use, right? After, before, because, and, or. It will walk them through how to use those joining words so that once they get to this point where they're really looking at content, they're making decisions based on all the experience they've had so far. So here I've got two complex sentences that I'm trying to combine. So I'm going to show you what the feedback looks like on this page. So it's looking to see if I've punctuated correctly. And now it's asking me to look into a little bit more detail with the hint here. All right, I got a little tongue-tied. So here they're suggesting and, right? So now I'm looking at this example and I'm going to see if I can rework this to include and. So now how could I make it more concise? All right, are there words that I could drop? How can I make it a better sentence? You notice that while this sentence is perfectly acceptable, they wanted me to try to make it a stronger sentence overall. Great, so now I've gotten to the point where I've written a good sentence. Now this page right here is maybe one of my favorite pages, and you see it in most Quill Connect activities. Actually, I think you see it in all. And what it does is it shows me different options of correct answers, right? I often have had conversations when I walk into a classroom just doing a Quill visit at this point. I'll ask students to reflect on this page for me and ask them, like, what is their favorite of the sentences? Sometimes they pick the sentence that they wrote, and sometimes they pick something else. Sometimes their reasons are as simple as it sounds better or it looks better, and sometimes it's this idea is expressed more clearly, right? But this is really powerful in that it helps students to understand the choices that they're making in writing. Now notice here, and there's not a terrible difference between the different ideas, but when we're using words like after and because and different and other different joining words, you'll find that the sentences can be drastically different. Now here's a place where, once again, like I said before, our algorithm is learning, right? It is gradually learning to understand what people write more and more. Two things will happen that students will notice. One, sometimes they will write a correct sentence that is not in our top 3 answers. I really like to applaud students for that because that means they found a unique way of writing the same ideas that not a lot of people do, right? And I think that's really cool for students to see that I have made a choice in my writing that's a little bit different. Occasionally what you will see is that a student will write a correct answer. You'll look over their shoulder. They've followed all of the rules. They've written their sentences correctly using all the expectations, and Quill is not recognizing it as a sentence. This doesn't happen a lot, but when it does, I get really excited. We call this outsmarting the algorithm. I would really appreciate it if you would tell the students that they have outsmarted the algorithm, and then if you would screenshot what they have done and share that with us. What that means is we then have the opportunity to teach our algorithm how to recognize even more complex sentences. I noticed with 7th graders last year, this was especially powerful because they really liked the idea of outsmarting, well, really anything, but especially the computer was very exciting to them. And so they would outsmart the algorithm as much as possible. So I found they would also be working to write better, more complex, more interesting sentences while still following the rules, because they had the aim of coming up with a sentence so unique that the computer hadn't seen it before, right? So I think that that can be a really powerful thing, and I really appreciate it. And that's, that's how Quill is able to grow and build, is because we take every single student answer and we use that to build the selection stronger and stronger. Questions about that?
No, it's process.
Great. Cool. So that's Quill Connect. We have some time right now. So would you guys rather look at Quill Proofreader or Quill Lessons?
Lessons.
All right, cool. The lessons are super duper exciting. I'm actually going to pull up a lesson that you all can try. So on your screens right now, I'm going to do some crazy magic, and then I'm going to give you a link that you can log into. Okay, so quill.org/tools/lessons. Okay, so right here in the corner of my screen, there's this URL. I'm gonna put it somewhere where I can make it a little bigger. Okay, so right now, if you want to go ahead, oops, sorry, I covered that. You're going to type that URL into your browser, right? goo.gl/H, lowercase b, capital D, capital F, lowercase z, uppercase H.
Okay. After the capital F, what is it? ZH. I see it now.
Once you get there, you're going to get to, we call it the lobby. And there in the lobby, you'll be able to write your name in and join the class. You should be able to see once you join the class.
So what should we be clicking on? Join the lesson?
Yes, join the lesson.
Okay, it's not letting us click on that.
It's not. Interesting. That's fun and exciting. Let me just try this real quick. Let me just make sure that the link that I shared with you all is correct. Would be correct. Okay. So because this is not working terribly well, I'm going to just sort of share these two screens with you right now rather than having you go through the process of trying to work them both out. So I'll pull up the student one and alternate the student one with the teacher view. So here I am the student, and here I am the teacher. Okay. So, all right, so for your students, they won't have to go through that funny process. They'll actually be logged in and it'll be assigned directly to them. This is the teacher view here at the top. And the teacher view includes two things. It includes a guide sort of for what you can use while you're talking. It includes a view of the student answers that you're getting as you go, and it shows you what your students are seeing over here on the left. In order to share this with your students, this will be the screen on yours, and then you will press Launch Projector. And this is a version that will show on your whole screen. Now, the way I share this with my class is, if you've ever mirrored before, it's a little less complicated. Otherwise, you can get instructions. You're going to unmirror your computer and then move this to the second screen so that it will show up, and just this will show up on your projector. Okay? Once again, there are instructions for this. I just wanted to show you that there is a second screen that you'll slide it onto. So that's what you'll do to share with the class. Okay? Once you're all set up, right? This is one of my favorite buttons to start students off with. I press the Watch Teacher, and here's what comes up for my student, right? Okay, I'm ready to get started, eyes up front. As I go through the lesson, each time I click on a slide, it will change on the student's page, right? Over here, there are some notes that just you can walk through beforehand or during that can support you with the lesson. Obviously, they're not mandatory, and if you want to go your own way, as they say, you can hide the step-by-step guide over here. Also click here, so I change the slides. So one of the different types of slides that we have is paired response, right? Here the students discuss, and they can either answer the same answer together or their own answers separately, right? So 0 of 2 students have answered. Here's what I can do here. As a student, I'm writing it and I'm submitting my answer. And here's where the teacher sees your answer over here on the page. If the student did something that maybe isn't terribly relevant, I can flag them, right? This is a way for me to know that I need to chat with that student about their answer at some point. If they gave an answer and I know they can do better in the moment, they maybe just, my favorite is the IDK responses that I got from students a lot, right? I go ahead and I hit the retry button. So what happens when I hit retry is the student screen goes back to what it was, back to basic, and they have to write in an answer again. There we go, and now on the teacher side I can see this. Now the other thing I can do is I can share answers with the class. If I click here and say I had 14 more students in the class, I could select as many as I wanted, and I can display those to the student. So here on the student screen, they can see those answers. Notice that they're numbered and not listed by name. If you'd like, you can say, James, who's number 1 here, wrote a really great sentence. Otherwise, you can use this as an anonymous discussion point for kids to compare the sentences, for them to ask questions, for them to have discussions about whatever it is that they've written. There are also teacher model slides. You can change the prompt in these. So if you want to make the prompt something more relevant to your students, you want to include your students' names in it, whatever else, you can change the prompt here. You can also model, right? So whatever I write in the model is going to show up for my students. Right, so if I'm looking at the student slide here, I'm seeing my teacher's model coming up, and then I can say to my class, I think I missed some capitalization here. What word do I need to capitalize? My student can say, the, so I can go back and I can change the capitalization here. I can say, I think I missed the combining, the joining word. What word do you think I should use to join the 2 sentences? Say when, okay? I can say here and put the when in. And also bold it and say this is what it looks like. So we have a couple different options here for how you can model for your students without moving away from the work that you're doing. Here you've got more individual practice for the students. So this gives the students the opportunity to answer more questions. Over the course of the lesson, you're able to see different examples of the work that students are doing. Right? Each time you're going to collect the student answers here. You can flag any students who've listed something that you're maybe concerned about or you want to check in with later. And you can share student answers using the check marks that we saw in the earlier slide. It's a little more fun when you can participate. Sorry, I didn't have that set up for you all. Okay. The other thing I can see here is if I'm not sure who's answered, right? So it's very different when you have 30 students you're looking at rather than 2. I can always either hide so I can just see the answers I've got, or show remaining students, right? I know Becca hasn't answered yet, so I'm going to check in with her, or I'm going to flag her because I know that she hasn't been answering the question. Once I get to the end of the lesson, I have the opportunity to push students forward based on their flagged or unflagged status, right? So Becca is flagged, and I will have the option to either keep her in a small group and push James Joyce off into independent practice, or I can push everyone off into independent practice right away. I really like this in terms of a differentiation strategy because it's quick, it's simple, it's easy. I can do it without my students ever seeing it. And when I come to the end, I can either have a screen that pops up for Becca that says, hold tight, your teacher's going to work with you in just a second, and then you can say, everyone with the blue screen, please come work with me. Or I can have everyone move into the independent activity, and I still know that Becca is one of the students that I need to work with right now. So the way lessons are designed is across the board. We want students to be having conversation about the writing strategies, the writing tools, the ideas, the rules that they are using. In each one of these lessons, we've written out different questions and conversations that you can have with students about the different sentences. And then we know that you all will have your own that will be terribly brilliant. And we're really, really excited for you to have the opportunity to have those conversations. Questions about lessons?
I don't think so.
Great. Cool. So the last place to go then is for us to look at student reports. Coming over here to student reports. We have a couple different types. We've already looked at the diagnostic reports that show us what recommendations there are for students. Let's go back to the visual overview here. So overall, I'm looking, I can see green means great job, yellow means the student needs to try it again, red means they're going to need help, gray means that's something they haven't completed yet. You can also see what type of activities they've been doing, right? Across the board here, it looks like I'd assigned this class all of the same things based on the flags and the targets, whatever else. But I might see that maybe my student has worked on seven proofreading activities here with the flag. They haven't done any grammar activities. That maybe is something I want to check in with on. Now, say I'm looking at these reds and I'm wondering what exactly Maya is struggling most with, right? I can give her a quick glance. I can look here and see, okay, so with after, although, and since, she really struggled with although, but she wasn't doing great with any of the three, right? Maybe here I'm looking and I'll see, okay, so since she was struggling with, but in general, I'm noticing that these time words she's really struggling with. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and click to find out more about what she's struggling with. Now, I wouldn't use this particular report, the activity analysis, for every single report for every single student, but I would use it anytime I'm trying to diagnose a certain issue that a student is having, right? I notice they're struggling a lot with a certain thing. Here's a way for me to see all of those, right? So if I look right here across the board at Maya, I can see what she's submitted for each one of these sentences and what she's gotten wrong and what she's gotten right, okay? So it's going to show me what she did that she got wrong. Okay, so in this case, it looks like the submission she put in was the sentence, right? So she's actually spelling different things in the sentence wrong, and then using the word wrong here too. Yeah, so choosing the wrong words and then also making spelling errors in that sentence. Okay? So we're seeing a couple different things about each of the student sentences here that we can look at and then decide how we want to proceed with them. The other way you can use the activity is by looking by question. So say I had every student in my class or I had a small group of students work on the after all those since problem. I can now look and see which questions they struggled the most, right? So I studied hard, I got good grades. They struggled with which combining words to use for this one, right? I know that they did, everyone across the board was able to figure out what joining word to use, and my parents gave me flowers after / over my singing. So the premium reports that you guys have access to, these are the first one is the list overview right here. Now, this is for data nerds. That's what I like to call this one. There was a brief and dark period of my life where I would spend a lot of time putting my students' data into spreadsheets and then messing with it. Here's the information you can use to do that if you so choose, right? You can download the report. It includes all the information about the student, the date that they last worked on that assignment, the activity, their score, what standard it was, and what type of activity it was. So I can go through and just go nuts in trying to figure out how students have done overall, right? So this is a lot of raw data that you can use to look. You can also look at certain activity packs to see the activities in that pack and how students did with those activities. The next report here that I find pretty helpful is the concept report. Here I can see sort of the overall work for students. So our goal for students over the course of the year is about 20 activities, right? So that's not a huge frequency. That's something that many folks do in a very short amount of time. You can use this all the time in your class. You also might find that this is something you want to work on 2 or 3 times a week for about 10 minutes each time. And the reason for that is that gives you a little bit more time to think about application, right? When is this coming up in my class? Are my students editing their writing for after, although, because? Are my students looking back at their writing to check for spelling and capitalization? Are they integrating the content from one of these lessons into their own writing, etc., right? Overall, though, when we're thinking about an activity, if it's about 10 to 12 sentences or questions, right, I can see overall how Maya's doing, right? So at this point, Maya's completed the most sentences in the class, but she also has the lowest score. So I'm wondering how much rushing Maya is doing during her work, and this is an area where maybe we're going to have a conversation about you're completing more sentences, but are you really being careful in your work, right? On the other hand, we have William here, and William has done 127 sentences, and he has the highest score, right? So William here is really being deliberate with his work, and maybe I'm going to pair him and Maya up on a certain assignment so that she can see how he thinks. Okay. Let's look at James here. He's our highest level performer, even though he's also completed the sentences. And I can see overall how he's doing on different concepts, right? The one he's strongest in, I can see, is compound subjects. He's had 14 opportunities to work on it, and he's gotten it right every single time, right? I'm less concerned about, say, anything where, say, he's only had one chance and he's gotten it wrong that one time, right? Like, that's an area I'm just not so worried about him because he's only had one chance to practice that thing. So overall here, I can share this report with James and let him know, and he can say, okay, so these are the things I really need to work on. I need to work on, James doesn't have a lot to work on, but I need to work on the way I use because I practiced that and I struggled with it. Or I need to check my capitalization, different ideas like that. The last one of these reports, and it's super duper helpful if you guys are really focused on Common Core alignment, this is also a helpful report for looking at students with IEPs. I can sort by student, and then if I click on an individual student, I can see which objectives they've had the opportunity to work on. Now, if I was sharing this with a student, I would simply cover up the standard level on this side and focus on the name of each one, right? Because the fact that it's a second grade standard doesn't matter. The fact that it's producing, expanding, and rearranging complete, simple, and compound sentences, that's what matters. The student has worked on these twice and is at 91%, so they've mastered this objective. So in this case, though, using coordinating and subordinating conjunctions, the student has worked on this twice and is not yet proficient, right? So that's something that I want to pay attention to. They've had a couple opportunities to try it, and they're still not quite where they need to be. So this is a great report to download. It can go really well when you're writing IEP goals. It can go really well when you're having discussions with parents about what students are working on. I can also use this to click on the individual standard and see if there's maybe something as a class we need to go through. So when I look at this, I can see Maya's the only one who's really struggling with the standard in my class. So I'm going to work with her individually on it, but it looks like everyone else is pretty much mastered. Are there any other questions about the data or the reporting?
Nope, I don't think so.
All right, great. So the only thing that we haven't really walked through is the proofreader. The proofreader is pretty straightforward, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that. It's, once again, it's an area where the kids are going through, they're making edits and changes. And what my favorite thing is about it, right? So here's a passage. These are the things that a student edits as they go. Then the report is here. I love that it actually walks them through each one of the things they change, right? Anything in red was something that they didn't change correctly. Anything green is something they changed correctly. And you'll also see purple show up, and that's if they make a change that didn't need to be changed, right? So red is I didn't change it, or I didn't change it correctly. Purple is it didn't need to be changed, but I changed it. And green is I changed it right. Now, after they walk through those and see the correct answers, they actually, it does not. It's actually going to walk students through some skills that they can practice, right? Random changes here.
I know.
Okay, so I didn't find any errors, right? You see my reds, my purples, things I didn't need to change, things I missed, things I missed. I'm speeding through this. Because what I like most about this was something I didn't learn about until a little while after I started using Quill. After they finish, it actually walks them through a few sentences on each one of the skills that they couldn't find in their writing, right? So it says you were not correctly identifying that dates needed to be capitalized or how to capitalize dates. So now I'm going to walk you through 2 to 3 questions on how to work on that, right? A lot of these proofreader things are formative assessments, but they really bring it back to students who practice skills that maybe they aren't correctly identifying, they're struggling in identifying, they're struggling in correcting. So this is like I said, it's a really great way to sort of come back to different skills for students and look at their proofreading and writing process overall. So we're right up on the last 2 minutes of our time here. Does anyone have any questions?
Anyone? No, I don't think so.
Okay, great. So there's one last thing I'm going to ask you to do before you head out. This is my email address, becca@quill.org. I'd love for you to write me a quick email. And in this email, you can just put, Wynn School as the title of the email or the subject of the email. If you have a question, you can write down your question. If you have some feedback, either something that you liked or didn't like, either in my presentation or in Quill in general, let us know. If you have anything that you really do like, or if you have a and that'll be it.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
So how do I turn it off?
Just close the window.
Yeah.
Okay.